Well, thank you so much for coming on. Like, I've loved your work for some time. Like, anytime I see someone who is talking about something that they lived through and then teaching it to other people, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And especially for me, post football, my career, I really went through a phase where I was trying to figure out who I was, because who I was identified by the thing that I did all of my life. And my identity was tied in that. My routine was tied in that. The way that I viewed myself, the things that I ate, everything was identified in that. Every single thing.
That's right. That's right.
And I believe, I've always said, like, I'm always trying to look for the root of every problem.
Yeah.
Or the root of how to solve something.
Yeah.
And I believe that who we are is really difficult to figure out. And I know that it all starts at childhood. Like, I believe that,
or even before childhood, when it starts with our wiring, our genetics. I mean, it's,
and that's what I'm really excited to talk to you about, because I think that's what I've been trying to understand. What I understand from my own lived experience is my belief systems, my virtues, my values, and I really want to get into like the aptitudes, because that's what really blows me away every time I read your work.
Let's talk all about it.
But when I think about where I'm from the inner city of LA. I was born in Inglewood, raised in Compton, like moved all up and down up in the inner city. And I know that the way that I am, the way that I saw myself, my morality all comes from who raised me and the environment that I grew up in.
Yeah.
And it's been always really difficult for me when leaving, trying to figure out why I think the way that I think, and if I actually believe that, because it's what I had to do. And a lot of these, defense mechanisms or the way that I view other people was all based on how I essentially had to survive. You know what I mean? And I've always said life is more about unlearning than learning. Like, when I became an adult, I'm like, I have to unlearn a lot of things and question them to see if I actually really believe them. So do you think that we need to unlearn before we can figure out what we need to do with our lives? Like, is that the first step, or do you think
it depends on the person?
Start?
It depends on the person. I mean, it depends on how much baggage that come with you. I mean, I think that I get where you're coming from saying that. I think it's different, because I definitely see students who come in, and when I say students, I'm talking about people of every single age who, because I teach open enrollment as well as teaching NYU students. So I've taught people up to 78 years old and doing the Becoming You methodology. And sometimes people come in and they're empty vessels. They don't have to unlearn anything. They haven't started learning. So I do think that, though, our entire lives are a dance between learning and unlearning as we figure out who we are.
So for the people who are kind of these empty vessels, what do you see with them? Do you feel like it's really easy for them to catch on to things and learn something and go with it? Or do you think that do they question more when they're trying to figure out who they are? Like, what are these empty vessels like?
Sometimes they're so defended. Sometimes they're so closed down. They are empty vessels because they've not let anything in. Sometimes they're empty vessels because they're skeptical about everything. So it's so unique for each person. But everybody kind of, look, nobody comes into the process without some presumptions about what's right and what's wrong and about who they are. And so a lot of times people have to peel away, in terms of unlearning, they have to peel away the stories they've been telling themselves about who they are. And that, I do a lot of work, especially in the values part, because aptitudes are pretty set. Aptitudes are testable, and we'll talk about it if you'd like. But with values, a lot of stuff separates us from truly understanding and knowing our values. Number one, that we don't know what values actually are. Number two, that we have identity issues around values. Like, this happens a lot with parents about family. It's like, family should be my number one value, and but secretly it's not, and it causes a lot of internal tension. So there is this kind of trying to separate people from the narrative they want to tell the world about themselves and the truth.
I heard you say that only 17% of people know their value.
It's even worse than that. It's even worse. It's actually only 17% of people can identify what a value is, and only 7% know their values. And so this is just nobody's fault, because it's just a systemic thing. So the word values, the biggest problem is it's completely misunderstood and overlap. People think it's values are virtues, and virtues are totally different thing than values. That's number one. Number two, the word values has been hijacked, if you will, by the political discourse, progressive values, conservative values, family values, Christian values, and people don't want to talk about values. So we don't even have the conversations to get people to understand their values. Okay, that's another big problem. But look, the problem is in school, no one actually looks at you. They may tell you like, okay, here's how you find the volume of a cylinder, but they're not going to say to you, let's talk about what values are and what social scientists know about them and how you can find out your own. So there's just so many things that conspire against people knowing their values and talking about them in clear. That's the work of my life. That's part of the work of becoming you, is like, let's get clear on what values are and what yours are, and no judgment, because we're not talking about virtues. Virtues you can get a little judgy on, because virtues are social and cultural constructs that we all agree are good. We all agree generally that goodness and fairness and kindness and compassion are good, and we can fight about that because that's what happens in the political field. Like, you're not compassionate enough to migrants, and then but let the virtue people have their fights. Okay, values are a judgment-free zone. They're about how we want to live. They're about how we want to work, make decisions, who we want to marry, and they're about like let's talk about like the value of scope, how big and exciting a life we want versus how contained and controlled and predictable a life we want. Scope is a value. There's no right or wrong. There's right or wrong for you. And so I think there's 15 values. I think it's really important to get clear about what your values are and that you're living your own.
That's interesting. What's coming up for me is when I hear value, I think of worth, because I've always seen that value means I'm valuable to someone or something.
Yeah, it's a dreadful word. It's just, I wish there was a different word for it, because value is about worth, right? But the term values is a really old term. I'm in this academic field. There's a field of values formation, how we come by so values are your deeply held beliefs that govern your actions and decisions if you're living them. Okay, so let's go back to that value of scope. Okay, this is a choice you make about how big and exciting and how many new experiences you want, how much even chaos, how many new relationships you want, how much learning, how much you want to travel. That's a high scope life. And then there's other people for whom that is just very unappealing. And all the way at the other end of the continuum is people who would like lives where they could tell you where they're going to be 1 year from today at 2:00 in the afternoon. They prefer their choice. Their deeply held belief is, I'd like a life of predictability and routine, because that meets my needs. I need more psychological safety. Then I'm not crazy about learning new things. That's not who I am. And so scope is nothing about your worth. It's about your choice about how you want to live. Some people have scope off the charts, and other people have scope that's very that's low. That I don't like using high or lower, because there's no right or wrong. There's only right or wrong for you. Now, the one thing about values that's kind of complicated, and there's 15 of these. I'd love to talk about all of them, but we can we'll go where you want to go. But I think that on each one of these values continuums, you can have a value. Like, you could be a person who says, I have such high scope. I wish I was riding in on a stallion into Studio 54 and dancing all night. I look at people who have the big, exciting lives, those influencers or whatever, and I yearn for that life. But I have a job that I got to be there 9 to 5, and 3 children under the age of 7, and my husband works nights, and I have absolutely no capacity to have any scope in my life. And so I'm a high scope person living a low scope life. And that's when we feel very uncomfortable in our skin. That's when we feel inauthentic. And so, what we do, the work of Becoming You, is figuring out where you are on all 15 continuums, and how much you are actually living your values. That's such important data about yourself. And again, there's no judgment in it. With each one of the values, this is about what you would like organizing your life. Would you like, there's a value of beholderism. Beholderism is a very old value, long established in the academic literature. And beholderism is about how much you care about how things look, including yourself. And people fight about this all the time, and they point fingers and they say, you only care about this, you only care about that. And the facts are that beholderism is aesthetics. It's what it's been called in older values inventories. You can really, really care about how your home looks and how your stuff looks and how you look, or you could care not at all. And there's no right or wrong. There's only right or wrong for you. We should stop picking on each other. This is a value. how much you care. But people get in a lot of fights about it. I've seen marriages break up over it. You know, I have a really good friend. I have high beholderism. I really care about how my house looks. I want my stuff to look beautiful. Now, look, you may think this is superficial, but it's very possible that beholderism as a value is a proxy for harmony. Because we can't control very much in this world, but we can control how our house looks, and we can control how we look. And so maybe I don't really care why you have this value. If you're not hurting anybody, you should have it. I have a really good friend who walks out of the house every day. She's a lawyer with a big knot in the back of her hair. She just says no beholderism, and I don't want to judge her. That's her value. She has low beholderism. I have high beholderism. She probably thinks it's nuts how much money I spend on a rug to make my house look just perfect. But that's my choice.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's freed me up a lot to talk about. You know, I when I was a young ding dong coming out of business school, I actually took a job at a company I should not have worked at because their offices were so beautiful. If I had only known that what was going on was it was igniting my high beholderism, I could have said, wait. Are you making a decision just based on beholderism? Because you have other values too, okay? And so, yes.
That is fascinating. Like, I love that because what's going through my head is like, okay, you noticed when you were in business school, after business school, you got this job, and you're like, this place is beautiful. I want to work here.
Yeah.
Not even thinking about the actual work that you have to do.
That's correct. Or whether I was good at it.
Yeah.
All the things I should have been thinking about, interests and aptitudes. I thought about my beholderism was on fire.
So how can someone feel and see that right now, call it out, and actually question themselves on like if it's the right thing, like if that job is the right thing, and how to pay attention to the actual building rather than the work, and how should they go about their decision making?
This is the work of my life. Okay, so the first number one thing you got to do is find out what your values are. Find out what they are. It's so easy. Take the test. I created a test so you could find out what your values are, because it was driving me crazy that the only people who were finding out were my students at NYU. And so one day, a couple of years ago, I put together a great team of developers and data scientists, and we created this thing called the Values Bridge. It's 100 questions. In 22 minutes, you get a report that tells you your values, ranked 1 to 15. So that's the number one step. Find out what and if you don't want to take the test, I get it. I mean, some people don't want to take it. There's a free version, by the way, but there's a more souped up version. It costs some money, not too much. And I think that find out what your values are, see where they are ranked. I mean, people have two reactions when they find out their values. The number one, they say, oh my God, they're like shocked to see this profile of themselves. And then there's a pause, and then they typically say, this explains everything. Because whether you like it or not, you've been operating according to your values forever and ever. You just haven't known it. There's a fantastic quote. I guest taught my class Becoming You at Stanford. And afterwards, these students there are quite bright. And afterwards, this young woman came up to me and she said, you know, your work, Professor Welch, it reminds me of that great Wittgenstein quote. And as soon as she said that, I thought, I don't know this quote because I know who Wittgenstein is, but I'm not quoting him. He was a German philosopher from like the 1850s. But the quote was, the limits of my language are the limits of my world. And you got to learn the language of values. It's only 15 words. I've taught it to people at dinner parties. Maybe this is why I don't get too many invitations to dinner parties, but people gravitate towards this information. And, you understood beholderism and scope the minute I told them to you. I mean, there's all these, there's a value of agency. That's how much we want to drive outcomes and decisions. Some people have to be the boss of their lives, and they are like crawling out of their skin if they're not the driver of every decision. If that, you've heard people say, look, it's my way or the highway, right? And then there's other people, that's high agency. You very high self-determination. I'm listening to one voice, it's mine. And then there's other people who are very low agency. They're super collaborative is how they present. They want to hear every voice in the room. And you can work for a high agency boss and it can be great for you, or you can work for a lower agency. But I myself personally am very low agency. I'm super collaborative. There's no right or wrong in this, but I'm telling you, my late husband, Jack, was off the charts on agency. There was no more high agency person in the world. And I often wonder, what would have our marriage been like if I had also been high agency? Because he spoke and I said whatever. It worked really, really well. And the interesting thing about finding out your values is, and the tool allows you to do this, is to check a little box and your values come up next to another person who's taken the test, like a partner. And you can see exactly, Yeah, I've done this in person with couples, and it's quite the moment, okay? Because sometimes I have a couple I'm working with right now, and the wife is refusing to take the test because she's so afraid to see her values compared to her husband's, because she already knows in her bones. And
It's funny you say that, because I'm thinking about values, the 15 values, and is there ever a case where somebody would pick do the test, see their values, and are afraid or uncomfortable with what their values are?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the first question I ask when everybody gets their results back is, do you like your values? And, the nickname of my class at NYU is the class where everyone cries. There's a lot of crying that goes on in it. Sometimes I cry in the class because there's such emotional experiences that go on. Finding out who you are is the most mind-blowing experience of your life. And people do a lot of crying. And, sometimes people don't like their values, or they're very disturbed by them. So I did the test recently with somebody, and her number one value came out as luminance. That's fame. That's fame, simple. I call it luminance because I try not to be judgy. Fame scares people. And she just was livid. And she's, first of all, she denied. Now, she said, luminance is not my number one value. That is absolutely BS. And I just paused and I said to her, the efficacy of the test is extremely high. I mean, this test has been validated 18 different ways and 18 different times, very research-based. And in fact, in the field of assessments, the kind of field that I'm in, it has the highest efficacy 92% of the time. It's right. Okay, so we've tested this with thousands of people. So I thought, okay, maybe she's in the 8%, but it's unlikely. And so she raged for a while and said, this is absolutely untrue. I'm not that shallow. I don't care about it. And I just paused and I said, let's revisit this like in 20 minutes. Why don't you just settle in with your results? Because here was the problem. She already agreed that the other results were right. So was there going to be this gigantic flaming wrong one at number one? And about 20 minutes later, she pulled herself together and she said, okay, it's true. And I've just spent my whole life lying about it. And I said to her, do you think that the people around you know that this is your number one value? And she said, probably. I said, I think they probably do. People know your values even when you won't admit them to yourself. And she said, well, what am I going to do about it? I'm not famous. I have no path to being famous. It drives me out of my mind, my whole life. She then went on to admit, from my little girl, I've been dreaming I was going to be a famous actress. Now, one interesting thing about her is that she went into a fame-adjacent field. She went into a support field for famous people in Hollywood. So she's around famous people all the time, and she helps build their careers. But she herself is totally behind the scenes. And she's in her 30s, and she said, what do I do? I'm not living my number one value. And I said, well, you got two choices. You can completely sublimate and repress this value for the rest of your life, or you can rip the Band-Aid off and go for it.
So would you say that someone like that, who's buried like the value that it sounds like the one that she most desired the most, is that because that value wasn't supported by the people who were around her?
As I always tell my students when they say to me, when they try to figure out where their values come from and why they haven't lived them, I always say, please take that up with your therapist. Yeah. Okay, that is not my pay grade. And I have theories. I think that's probably part of it. It may have to do with her self-confidence. Now, the open question for everybody with their values is, should she go be famous? Well, the question is, that may be her number one value, but she may not be good at it. Okay, she wants to be an actress. She may not be good at it. And that's why my methodology asks you to look at the intersection of three data sets. One is your values, and those are very, very important. But the second one is your aptitudes, because she may want desperately to be famous, and just simply not have any skills that would. And so then then you recognize and you honor that you have that value, and you come to terms with the fact it's never going to be fully expressed. You may want to be, a Celine Dion, but if you can't sing, you can't sing. And so for her, she hasn't even tested if she's good at it. And so she needs to take some acting classes and see if she's got some kind of ability to do it. But, there's this dance, this lifelong dance between our values, our aptitudes, and our interests. I know another person who's just fascinated by gaming, loves gaming, everything about gaming. So he found a career in gaming and found his way into marketing in gaming. And his career just stalled for 10 years, and he was finally let go. And the problem was he was in a field that really, really interested him, but he had no aptitudes for it. And it wasn't actually totally aligned with his values either. And now he can do a refresh and figure out what his values are and his aptitudes are. And he's going to have to find another area of interest because he didn't make it in the gaming world. None of these alone are enough. That's our work.
Yeah.
Our lives. Yeah.
Man, this is like breaking my brain. Like
I'm sorry.
It's great. It's like I meant breaking my brain in a really good way because I think I really understand values, and I think growing up, like like for me, I always gravitated towards performing arts. Mm-hmm. But where I'm from, we didn't have that resource. Like it was sports, because sports kept us out of trouble, and I was blessed with some athleticism, and it worked out well for me. And it was later on in my life where I was like, man, when I see somebody playing guitar or singing, I'm like, damn, man, like I just wish I could have did that. So I'm listening to this person's story that you're sharing, and I'm just like, yeah, I get it, you know. And it was never supported because I didn't have the resources, but it's still there. And this is where I want to go into the aptitudes, because when I read about aptitudes from you, I like looked up the definition when I first saw it, and it simply is a natural ability to do something. And for me, that sounds overwhelming because there are so many things that feel natural to do. You know what I mean? Like especially when you're like multifaceted, you feel like you're talented, you feel like you can learn really quickly. Right. You feel like, oh, that's natural. So how do you know, like how does someone know what they're naturally built to do? Because then I'm thinking about the different ages. Like you teach a kid this at 10 or 15 or 20, or an adult at 25 or an adult at 40, it's like, where do I even start? How do I know what I'm naturally built to do?
This is the exact question. Let's talk about it for a second. So aptitudes, to be clear, are your inborn proclivities, and there's a couple of different ways they present. You know, for you, it was kind of interesting because sometimes the earliest, this is what you're hardwiring. What's in you when you come out? Okay, you've got some aptitudes. Some of them are physical, and actually, sometimes the people with the physical aptitudes get the shortest shrift because those present very young, and everybody just pushes you towards that. Them, right? You know, 100%. Like you can like throw a ball, and your hand-eye coordination probably showed itself at 3 years old, and people are like, look at that. And kids who are very good at music also present incredibly young. And my son Marcus presented at being like surreally good at all sports but golf, like when he was 5. And I remember the pro at our country club saying, you know, what your son's got, we could never teach. You know, his name will be in the books of golfing. Here was the problem. He didn't like golf. Okay, we couldn't force him to play it. Okay, so that mattered. But like some of these things present very young, and people are pushed toward their physical or their musical or their aptitudes. But the facts are, we have other kinds of aptitudes, and the aptitudes that don't get tested and don't get understood until way too late are two different kinds. One is our cognitive aptitudes. Our brain has 8 big cognitive aptitudes that exist on continuums. Let me give you an example of one. Your brain is either wired, and this is just completely scientifically validated, and it's set from when you're 15 years old or so. Your brain is wired for you to be a generalist or a specialist, okay? Either you want to know a little bit about everything, you're kind of like the mayor of a town, and you sort of want, you know, a little bit about the parking lot problem, you know, a little bit about the school, you know, definitely know about what's going on with the trees, and you know everything, you kind of know everybody, okay? You're a generalist. And then the other end of that spectrum is a specialist. And a specialist is that person who you do not want to sit next to at a dinner party because they know everything about, like they study mushrooms and they know everything about every mushroom variety, and like you could just lose your mind hearing them talk about it, but it's endlessly interesting to them. They're deep, okay? And there's different kind of work that is better aligned with people who are generalists versus specialists. And when people are doing poorly in jobs, I immediately know, you know, okay, it's an aptitudes mismatch. So there's 8 big cognitive aptitudes, and you can kind of intuit them, or you can just get them tested. There are lots of tests on the market. You can just go. I mean, the one I like and give to all my students is called U-Science. The problem with it, it's an excellent test. The problem is it's a little pricey. It costs $50, but in some ways it's the best $50 you'll ever spend. You know, if you're a parent, give this to your kids or take it yourself. And it tells you, it gives you a profile of where you are on those 8 continuums. Are you a brainstormer or a concentrated focuser? Do you, when asked for an idea, just spew ideas left, right, and center? Not all of them good, but you've got the low ego control, like you just have ideas galore. Or sometimes people just have one idea at a time, and that person is wired to be a concentrated focuser. There's different kind of work for both those kinds of brain wirings. If you're going to be a social media manager, you better be a brainstormer, okay? But if you're a physicist, being a concentrated focuser is probably going to be a better idea. So the way you go about finding out what your cognitive aptitudes are is testing. I am currently we have a great development lab at NYU called Becoming You Labs, and we're currently developing a very, very inexpensive version of an aptitude test because I'd like to democratize it a little bit. I think that most of the aptitude tests out there are too expensive. We'd like to create one that costs about $10 so everyone can get their aptitudes test.
That's great.
Tested. We're working on that as we speak. Hopefully be coming to you soon. But so that's the number one thing. You need to know how your brain is wired. Now, again, there are other aptitudes. There's physical aptitudes. I'm sure had them, musical aptitudes. There's other really quirky aptitudes like hue detection. Like, how you have friends who can see like every shade of blue and you're like, that looks blue to me. And they're saying, no, that's sort of blue green. That's hue detection. And if you're going to be in decorating or anything like that, hue detection is an aptitude you need. There's like 52 kind of very specific. There's glare detection, like how much you respond to glare, and truck drivers and pilots are tested for that. But here's another aspect of aptitudes. It's super important. And that's your emotional aptitudes. Your personality is what I'm talking about. Because you can be very, very, very good at a job because of your personality, and you can be very, very, very bad at a job because of your personality. And that sounds very simple, but here's the big problem, and it's big, which is that we, unfortunately, as humans, believe that our personalities are the words we use to describe ourselves. I'm loyal, I'm caring, I'm funny, I'm a good listener. All these words we use. If I asked you to describe your personality, you'd come up with like 5-6 words. And maybe they're true, and maybe they're not. Because at the end of the day, when we're talking about personality as an aptitude, it's how the world experiences us. We may think that sorry about that. I know, same thing my students say.
That's good.
They're just like,
good.
Joe, they're like, why are you telling me this? It is the moment of truth where I just stop and look at their faces and they're like, want to put their hands over their ears. We may think that we're candid, but the world experiences us as rude. Okay? And we may think we're kind, but the world experiences us as weak. And if we want to figure out what we should do with our life, it is not enough to listen to the narrative we tell ourselves about who we are. We have to know how the world experiences us.
That's so good. That's so good.
Thank you.
God. Because it reminds me so much of like sports, because you can't hide. And whatever your flaw is on the field, someone's going to tell you, and you go back and you get better at that thing. But we're not taught this about our lives and how we think and how we go about the world and how we view the world. And when I was thinking about like how the 5 ways that I would describe myself, I don't even have 5 anymore, because I realized I kind of just I picked those things based on how others probably experienced me,
That's right.
or how I was hoping that I made someone feel when they got around me. I'm grabbing things out of the air, hoping that I picked the right thing, and now I'm just like, whoa, who am I really?
Yeah.
And what are people experiencing, and what am I experiencing?
I mean, I got to tell you, I will say 2 things. One is that one of the reasons why companies like to hire athletes is that they have been told the truth about themselves for a long time. And companies really appreciate that aspect of athletes, because they're not like, you don't have to sugarcoat anything, because athletes come off the field and the coach says, you sucked. You did X, Y, and Z wrong. And athletes are taught, I mean, both my sons were athletes. My oldest son was a great wrestler, and he was always so good at taking criticism, because there's no messing around. You don't come off the mat and the coach says like, hey, can I an idea by you? The coach just tells you exactly what's going on. And that's why athletes are often appreciated in workplaces. They're used to very direct feedback. Now, there's almost no way to find out how the world experiences you unless you ask them. And then when you ask them, they lie to you. And so I developed a very, very inexpensive test. It's less than a ticket to a movie, where you can ask 40 people anonymously to tell you how they experience you in 3 ways. 1, how you deal with people. 2, how good your ideas are. And 3, how well you get stuff done. Okay? People, ideas, and execution. This is all that really matters. I mean, I'm concerned about people getting jobs. And so what matters in work is people, ideas, and execution. And so you send it out. The test takes less than 5 minutes, 2 questions per area. And what happens is you take the same test. And then you get a couple pieces of data back. You find out your self-awareness. That's the gap between what they're saying about you and what you said about yourself. And then we break it down for here's what people say about how you are with people, and here's what you think. So you get a self-awareness score, and then you get an overall score about how the world experiences you. This day, when people get the test back, is so shocking. Everybody thinks they know exactly how the world experiences them, and nobody, every once in a while, I mean, I've done this thousands and thousands of times. Every once in a while, you get something with a direct overlap, but it is rare. Almost nobody understands how the world is experiencing them because the world thinks it's being very nice, not telling you. So the day that people get this data back is so stunning because, I'm dealing with adults. And one of the fun things I like to do, and fun, but kind of in a macabre way, is I say to people before they take the test, what do you think your self-awareness score is going to be? And, most people say, it's going to be very high, over 90%. I know, really? I know. And the average self-awareness score from all the data we have, tens of thousands of data points, is below 50%.
Yeah, that's not surprising to me because to be self-aware takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of being able to look in the mirror. You know what I mean? You have to look in the mirror.
Oh my God, but nobody does it. Yeah, nobody does it. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was one of the biggest things I struggled with when I was done playing because I was so used to being around guys who just looked in the mirre.
Yeah, I know,
we could just be honest with each other.
That's the beauty of athletes is that they've had they've had no way out. They have to know how they're performing. There's no, the team can't play unless everybody's at top performance. The real world doesn't operate that way. What typically happens in business places is that people aren't told because everybody's being kind. People aren't told, everybody's kind. And then they get fired. And they're like, what? Nobody told me and they were like, we didn't want to hurt your feelings.
Yeah. Gosh.
And that's how it usually goes.
Yeah.
It's how it usually goes. But we need to know this data about ourselves. And, here's the thing. Over time, in life, eventually, most people age 60 or so figure it out. Okay? Because they've lived the consequences. They've thought that they were candid, and everyone thought they were rude. And then at 60, they say, where are all my friends? And the world will tell them. But why do we have to wait till we're 60? To find that out. So this is a very shocking part of the process, but so necessary and actually very cathartic because all of this stuff can be fixed. All of this stuff can be fixed. It's like, you're finding out a self-portrait, but the brush is in your hand. Change the picture. If you find out, for instance, that people think, this is the one where there's a big gap, that you think that you get everything done, okay? Execution, I get it done. I say I'm going to do it and I do it. I promise it. I deliver it on time, okay? And that people always think that they're very good at execution. Sometimes I'm a little late, but things get in my way. It's not really, whenever I don't get things in, it's not my fault, okay? That's how people, and then they get back results or, and they find out, I thought I was like 90% on execution. My aggregate score is 30%. People are, people think I don't ever get anything done. But guess what? You could fix that starting tomorrow. I mean, there's a lot of different questions you can ask people. When do you want this exactly? And then when you get handed in, you say, did I get this to you exactly when you expected it, how you expected it? I mean, these are all fixable problems if you want.
Why do you think people are so afraid to go towards this kind of work to essentially get the lives that they want to live? Because I would think that if you're made up a certain way and you have you have data that you can get to live the life that you are essentially designed to live. Why do people run away from it?
That's a great question. Look, I'm lucky and that the people who are running towards it find me, right? So in my classes and in my open enrollment, I'm sitting there staring at hundreds of faces of people who are there saying, okay, I'm here, I want to do it. But there are definitely, like at NYU, there are definitely students who do not want to take my class. And they are they don't want that data. They don't want it. I mean, they say things like, I know who I am and I know what I'm doing. I'm going to banking. And, I feel like I'll see them when they have their midlife crisis at age 42. You know, I eventually, almost every person has this reckoning.
Yeah, the wake up call, right?
Yeah, eventually.
Yeah, and that's so scary to think about, because I think about like my parents and how, I mean, it's a little different from, I guess, from my parents, because again, they had to do what they had to do.
Yeah,
and
right.
they didn't really have any choice.
Right.
And now, like my mom had me when she was really young. My mom was 15 when she had me. And now all of, like, it's me, my younger brother, and my younger sister, we're all adults now. And my mom is kind of going through this thing where she's trying to figure out who she is, how she's made up, what does she like, why did she do this when she was young? And I'm just sitting here like,
no, I could hug her. I'm telling you, I get so many of these women in my classes, or they find me online where the kids are gone and they gave their whole lives to the kids. And the kids benefited. It's beautiful. They have no regrets about that decision, but the kids are gone and they have no idea who they are or which way to go. And I have such a heart for them. Yeah. And I have so many friends who did that. When my kids were little, I feared that outcome for myself. And plus, I just had very high values around achievement and work centrism and affluence. I wanted all those things. I wanted to, I had values that kept me in the workforce in a way that was kind of very, very fierce and intentional. And I said to my kids, when they said to me, why can't you stay home like Johnny's mom? I said to them, look, someday you're going to grow up and you're going to go away, but I'm still going to be here. And I don't want to start inventing myself when I'm 45 years old. And I don't know why I had that foresight. I don't know why, but it held me in good stead. But I have a gigantic heart for the women who said when the kids, either they had to or they wanted to stay home with the kids, and they gave their lives to others. And then they're in this moment where they're asking, but who am I and what do I do next? And it can lead to such self-doubt and such despair. And what ends up happening, and I don't know if your mom's experiencing this, they think it's too late.
Yeah.
It's too late for me to start that career I wanted. It's too late for me to learn that skill I wanted. It's too late for me. And it's like, too late. You've only just begun. You know, it takes just so much courage and self-belief, which a lot of times has been kind of knocked out of you because you haven't been validated by the outside world. You've been doing stuff that does not get validated.
When I think about like the term "it's too late," I think most of the time that is said because they're looking at time in a very simple way. Like, I am X age, I was X married, I had X amount of kids, I did X job for this long, so it's too late. What would you say to someone, like, what should be the new definition of, like, it's not, like, too late isn't even a thing?
But I just think it's too late when you're dead. That's when it's too late, when you're gone. I mean, I think, you know, I think about this story. My mom is 98 years old. And when she was around 8, we're a big dog family. You heard my dogs breathing in the background. We're just dog people. And their last dog passed away when she and my dad were about 88. And she said, should we get another dog? I said, absolutely, yes. And she said, no, it's too late. We won't, you know, the dog will outlive us. It's too late. So now she's 98. And you know what she said is, I could have had a dog all these years. And she, you know, it's just like, I could have had a dog. And I said, that's right. The dog would be, you know, 10 years old now, and you would have had all those years of joy. Why do we decide? We don't know when the end is at all. I mean, and then think about it this way. I have another metaphor. I'm a big New York City subway advocate. I'm always on the subway. It's the most efficient way to get around this crazy city.
And it's just cool. That's my favorite thing about New York.
It's cool when you're not scared out of your mind. But I would say, you know, I think one of the things is I've been taking the subway in New York for decades. And I think I'm a true expert. Like, there's not a corner of the city I haven't hit. But what that does is it makes you too self-confident. So one time I was going out to Brooklyn to have some Ethiopian food with my kids. Okay. And I was wandering around in subways, and I kind of was looking at my phone, and I thought I knew where I was going. And I got on the wrong train going out to Brooklyn, which has like 8 different lines going out to it. And how I got on the wrong one, I don't know. Overconfidence is how I did it. And because I had changed twice at that point coming downtown. And I got on it, and I'm riding along doing the crossword puzzle, and suddenly the train goes above ground. And I knew that the train I was supposed to be on never came above ground. And I looked up and I thought, oh my God, I'm on the complete wrong line. And at the next stop, I got out, went under the train tracks and got on and went back and started again. And so to me, it's like the minute you realize you've made a mistake, get off the train and turn around and go someplace else. I mean, was I to wait until that wrong train took me all the way to the end of a line? So I went someplace I really, really didn't want to go, and so why would you stay on the train? Get off the train.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love when people like have these real life experiences and they kind of use them like teachable moments. That's awesome. I'm thinking about something that you I've heard you say a lot, and it's I think it's a really good the story you just told is a good place to transition to this, where you say pick it and stick it, because I think a lot of the times people will explore in something. Will be like, oh, I don't think this is right, and don't even give it a chance. So could you explain to the audience like what pick it and stick it means and how that can really help them with their lives?
Yeah, thanks. I love saying pick it and stick it. And it's actually quoted back to me a lot because it's so convicting. I think of people, here's the thing. The mind game we play with ourselves is we relitigate something every single day. Like, should I do it? Shouldn't I do it? Should I do it? Shouldn't I do it? And my answer is like, that's agony. That's mental agony. And sometimes we just have to make our choice, pick it, and stick it. Try it out. Say, I'm giving it 6 months and give it a year or whatever, and then make a decision based on that. But do you pick it and stick it knowing your values and virtues and aptitudes? Yeah, your values, your aptitudes, and your interests. Yes. Interests, sorry. Yeah, I mean, I think, yes. I think you should always know that data before you do it. But like so here's an example of it. Sometimes people find out from doing their values work, okay? Sometimes they find out from doing their values work that their number one value is family centrism, that family is their organizing principle. But they find out that their number 2 value is work centrism, and their number 3 value is achievement. Work centrism is work for work's sake. You just love work. Yeah, you wake up in the morning, you think about all the different ways you can work. You don't hate, work is not a means to an end. Work is the end. You just love it. And achievement is seen success. You want to be successful and you want accomplishments. And so people who have this, if you're a parent, a working parent, and you've got family first and then work centrism and achievement next, these are values that are in deep conflict. And they're in deep conflict because there's around 20 years of your life where your kids need you, mind, body, and soul. And your work, if you're going to succeed and excel, needs you mind, body, and soul. And those, because of biology, those 15 years overlap from ages around 25 to 45. Just the way it goes, it's a rip. But that's the way it goes. And sort of when your kids are like, just when your kids really want and need your full attention and availability, just as work says, we'd like your full attention and availability to see if you are leadership potential. Those days overlap. And the people who get screwed, if you pardon my French, the people who suffer the most, let me put it that way, every single day, wake up, go to work typically, or stay home, and they relitigate every day in their mind if they made the right decision. Wait, one matters to me, but I can't, And my answer is, pick what you're going to do. I am going to work and I'm going to do my very best to be present for my family and live it. Stop having the internal battle with yourself every single day and see how it goes for a year and if it's sustainable for you. Or alternatively, decide to repress or sublimate your work and achievement values for 2 decades and decide to stay home with the kids, but don't take it out on them that you did it. And don't have that internal battle every single day where you spread your ambivalence all over everybody. You're gonna, with the data of your values and your aptitudes and your interests, make your decision and then live it. Give yourself a year to see if you can do it. And if you can't, then revisit. But to renegotiate with yourself every single day just takes all this toxic energy of you renegotiating and your ambivalence, and you smear it all over everybody you touch.
It's so funny. I was about to ask you a question. I was going to ask you, how do you know it's right? And what I hear you saying is like, well, you probably don't even know it's right until you try and commit to it, right? Because I think that juggling always happens, especially when having so many responsibilities and interest, that you have to just commit to it for X amount of time and see how it goes. I mean, can you grow to love something that you don't see yourself doing by picking it and sticking it?
I hope so. I mean, sometimes what you can do is you do it and it's hard, but eventually you're like almost anything, you're going to get better at it. I mean, whenever I see a working parent or working mom who's struggling and the kids are like in first and second grade, I always say the same thing to them. It gets better. You get techniques, you get skills, you find ways. They get older. Just stick with it. You're going to get better at it. So you can grow to have less angst around the decision you've made, for sure.
Mm-hmm. So how do we measure progress without falling into the trap of chasing certainty?
I think you can just, people sometimes say to me, how do you know you're living your purpose? Like, I think it's the same question you're asking. And the answer is you feel exquisitely alive. It's not every minute. This is why I never talk about happiness, because happiness is fleeting. I like talking about purpose because purpose is much more sustainable. And, when people say, how will I know? I say, well, it's sort of like being in love. You know when you're in love, don't you? You do. I mean, you are like, you could say, well, I kind of like that person. And there's other times where you say, I love that person. And it's like when I'm teaching, I could levitate. I am so overjoyed. And now, are there hard parts about teaching? Yeah, I don't like grading 600 exams at the end of the semester, okay? I mean, there are parts of teaching that's ridiculous, okay, that are very, very hard. I mean, there's parts of teaching I don't enjoy at all, but I know that teaching is the only time I feel this feeling that I can only describe as being exquisitely alive. Like, I know I'm dwelling in my values. I know I am exercising my aptitudes, and the work is so freaking interesting to me that I could talk about it for 100 years. And I'm there and I feel it. It's a visceral feeling. Sometimes in class, I show a video clip from Disturbed, the heavy metal band singing.
I love Disturbed.
I love them too.
Stricken was my high school. Like when I was in high school, I listened to Stricken over and over and over before my games.
I feel you. I feel you 100%. I love them so much. I know my students do not expect to come to have Professor Welch playing Disturbed, but I do, because they have a cover of The Sounds of Silence. And it is so beautifully performed. And I say, look at the drummer. The drummer's in the back. And that guy is not even on earth. He is so moved by the music. He's so good at what he's doing. And he is living his purpose. Every synapse is firing. And I say, look, I want you to be the drummer in Disturbed. I want you to be, what this guy feels like, that's available to you. Not overnight and not without doing the work. But that is what we're here for.
I love that you say that, because I think that the more people, I think although we can realize that you get the feeling from doing the work, the feeling doesn't come and then the work comes second. I think that being able to listen to the feeling and let that, motivate you or make you curious as to why you feel the way, and maybe that can help set up your, path to saying, I want to feel like that again.
Yeah.
And then hopefully finding the tools to know, I would say, how to do it, but more than anything, you need the tools to figure out who you are and how you operate, and that's what you do. Like, I'm about to take every single test this weekend, because I've done.
I wish you. Do you want to come to the Becoming You? We do it in 3 days in September. You're invited. September 12th, 13th, and 14th in New York. I teach this class. You got to come.
Oh, for sure. What are those dates? Oh yeah, I'll definitely come.
September 12th, 13th, and 14th. It's 3 very intense days. We do all the tests, all the exercises. And it's like 3 super intense days. You got to come. It's in New York City.
So should I wait to do the test then? Should I wait to come in September?
You're going to have to do them before you come, but you can take the test now and keep listening to my podcast and so forth and so on. But you will, I'd say, do them closer to that so that they're really fresh for you. And actually, by that time, the tests will be a lot better. But the values bridge, which tells you what your values are, you should do it tonight so that you can start talking about them tomorrow. Okay. That's my opinion. But hold off on the others.
I 100% will do that.
We're going to get connected with you. Make sure you're there. That would make me so happy. That would be fantastic.
100%. I'm going to have my wife do it too, because the one thing that I've been really exploring within my marriage is, like, the past 2 months, I've been like, man, me and Charlotte, that's my wife's name, are so different. But the way that we work together works. But what if I really understood how she operates, and I can just play into those, I want to call them strengths, just play into how she's wired. You know what I'm saying? Because I think there's so many things that are going on, it's hard to really know.
The number one thing that happens when students or young people or people in the open enrollment classes, the number one thing that happens when they go through Becoming You is they say this: my wife/husband needs to take this. Because look, we are, if you're in a partnered relationship, everything that you do is in an ecosystem. And one of the things that makes me very jealous, I try not to have any jealousy in my life, but there's a version of Becoming You that's taught at Harvard Business School. It's got a different name, but it tries to do the same thing. And one of the things that drives me crazy is that at Harvard Business School, when you take that class, they allow your spouse to take it with you. And to me, this is the greatest thing in the world. I would love us to be able to do that because I think exactly what you just said is, number one, the sign of a very good partner, to say, I want my wife to do it because I want to be able to talk to her about values. And I want to know, like, wouldn't it be so interesting if when you guys do the aptitudes testing, if you find out that where you're this, she's that, and the balance of who you are is so fantastic. So one of the things that we do is everybody takes their Enneagram. I'm a gigantic supporter of Enneagram. It's a personality type indicator. And I was talking to in my family, all of my poor children, I have 4 children, and everybody who knows me has to take all these tests so that they can talk to me and I can talk to them. And I was talking to my son about a difficult conversation he's going to be having coming up with his wife. And I said, listen, we all know, you and I know, sweetheart, that in your Enneagram type is you're a peacemaker. You do everything to have harmony, but your beloved wife there, she's a challenger and she'll do anything to, have very tough conversations. And what ends up happening when a peacemaker and a challenger get together is the peacemaker immediately folds. But you're about to have a conversation where you're going to have to not do that. And just the language to talk about this. I mean, it's like I myself, my Enneagram type is I'm an achiever, meaning I need all the claps. I need the claps. And that knowledge about myself and how it's different from my children, who are none of them are achievers, is just, it helps me understand, like, wait, you don't want that fabulous job you've just been offered? Don't you want the claps? And they say, no, Mom, you are the achiever. You want the claps. Okay. I'm over here. I'm an individualist and I don't care about claps. And so look, once you know yourself, you have so much compassion for those around you because you can see that they are a combination of these bundles of things that make them unique. I'm going for world peace here. That's my goal.
Yeah, man. You're definitely going to achieve that because I think everybody who's walking around not knowing who they are, and not because it's their fault. It's not taught. We're not taught how to do it.
Like, my dream is to get this into high schools, because imagine if we started in high schools with kids knowing who they are and at least being able, look, they're not formed yet, but even if they could just say, even if they had the language to say, I'm struggling with my value of luminance versus my value of non-sibi, which is the value that gives you the impulse to try to help people all the time. And those two values can be in conflict, but just to know that about yourself, it just...
You actually have a roadmap. Like, I can't even imagine if I had these tools in high school and what it could have helped me with. Because a lot of the things that I'm dealing with in my adult life, like, a lot of times I beat myself up. Like, man, I feel like I should know this. Like, I feel like I'm too old to... And have all these kids, and like I'm working on this thing that seems so ridiculous that I should know already.
You feel that way, but like, take it from me. Like, I finally stepped into this fully and understood it fully when I was 60. And I was presenting to the world as this unbelievably with it together successful person, smiling on the Today Show, telling people how to live their lives. And I had this stuff going on where I couldn't, until I made it my life's work, got my PhD and did all this stuff where I truly understood it as a system. That's why I have so much empathy for people going through it. It's like, people say all the time what you just said. It's like, shouldn't I know this by now? Why? The world's not set up for you to know it. It's just the world's set up for you to understand, like, when you're in elementary school, the irrigation system of Mesopotamia. It just doesn't matter. And it's nice to know, but it's not, it's not need to know. But guess what? Like, what we need to know, we find out too freaking late. Yeah. So that's what I'm all
it definitely needs to be swapped. And I'll end with this too. Like, you said, like, people feel, including myself, should not know this. And you said this earlier, where you stop when you're dead, right? Like, there's always time. And, just like your mom, she could have had a 10-year-old dog and the dog would have been old.
And all the joy. I said to her, think of all the joy you missed, because I know we're dog people, but like, every day my dogs make me so happy. And she said, she's so happy when I visit with my dogs that, get the dog, in other words, make the change, do the thing. Why not?
Yeah, 100%. Well, thank you so much. I'm gonna come out there in September for sure. Is there anything else coming up? Like I know you have your podcast, you have the Becoming You book. Anything else
I
you
got
wanna?
my podcast. I think I've got a webinar coming up August 2nd about values.
Okay.
Which I think it will be on my website. If you go to SuzyWelch.com, every single thing I'm doing. We're actually thinking about taking Becoming You on the road. Like right now, I do it in New York, but we're thinking about going out to LA and Chicago with it. That's one thing we're thinking about. I'm going to London to do it coming up pretty soon.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. I got to figure out a way to bring my dogs with me, though. That's the problem.
What kind of dogs do you have?
I have 2 big German shepherds named Sir and Audrey. And then the rescue that I work with called me 2 years ago, and they said, look, we just got a big rescue case. We just got 65 dachshunds in from a hoarding case in Texas. And do you want a dachshund? And I said, well, I've never had a small dog in my life. I have these very big dogs, Great Pyrenees and stuff like that. And they said, okay, well, would you be interested in a dachshund? I said, I'll come look. So I drove up to the rescue, and literally the back window of my car was open, and they came over and they put a dachshund in the back seat. And then they said, next. And I was like, wait.
Really?
Yeah. So I got a dachshund.
I've never heard that. That's crazy.
But they were giving away dachshunds like you would not believe. I mean, 65 dachshunds is a lot. So I ended up getting a dachshund, and now now I would like to have every dachshund because they're kind of spectacular dogs. So I've got the shepherds and the dachshunds. They're quite the crazy trio. You see these really big, fierce looking dogs, and then like his name is Pierre because he's very frou-frou. So Pierre has a huge following. Pierre's a lot of people love Pierre. He's and sometimes there are people who literally like will come to my speeches in hopes that Pierre will be there.
Pierre's there. Yeah. That's a great dog name. So he's a little dog. That's a great name for a dog. All right. Well, you got to come. Right. We'd love to have you, boy. We would love to have you. No, for sure. I'm definitely going to come. Okay. I'm going to take the values test tonight for sure. Values with I'm going to do it with my wife too. Yeah, 100%. Because it's like, why not just do it together? This is my last thing. Sorry. Is there any value in like me? Like, how can I teach some of this stuff to my kids now? They're young. I have 7 and 5 and 2-year-old. Is there anything that I could be doing now to teach my 7 and 5-year-old these things? Absolutely. Like, I don't know if I can put them.
Absolutely. I think here's what you can do as a parent. Number one is you can introduce them to the concept of values and virtues. That virtues are about their character, and your number one job as a parent, at least according to me, but I'm sure according to you, is just to make sure they've got fine character. Mm-hmm. But values is the journey in helping them understand who they are and how they want to make decisions and how they want to live around these different 15 choices, and that's something that they're going to be thinking about that for the next bunch of years of their life. But the real thing you can do as a parent is help them understand that they have certain cognitive and emotional gifts, and that you're going to be working together with them as they grow up to identify those, so that their life is a story of them leaning into what they're really good at, and doing and finding work and activities that are really play to their strengths, and that's your partnership with them.
Mm-hmm. I'm 100% taking all these tests, because even like I think about, it's so funny because I parent like that. I'm trying to figure out, okay, what is Maddie's strength? What is Luca's strength? Right. And I'm just guessing. Like, why guess?
But once you know what the cognitive aptitudes are, you will begin to recognize them in your children. I mean, all the time I say things to my kids like, well, your inductive reasoning is doing X, Y. That's because you're a brainstormer. You're a real process supporter. And I use the language. I give them language to understand. And it helps them so much. I remember one time in class, I was teaching the aptitudes, and there was a woman in the back row who was trying to hide the fact that she was sobbing. But I get a lot of crying in class, as I said. Mm-hmm. And after class, everybody cleared out. This was a big class, 80, 90 students. After everyone cleared out, she came up to me, and her face was completely like covered with tears. And she said, I finally understand why I have been bad at my job for the past 5 years. It's been agony. And then she said this wonderful thing. She said, it's not my fault. I mean, I shouldn't be in this job, but I'm in a specialist's job, and I am a generalist. I'm working against my brain. And the good thing for her is that she went to her boss, she showed the results, and the boss said, oh, we got a job for you. It's over here in this part of the company. And she transferred, and it was like her hands were untied from behind her back because she was finally doing work that was actually fit her inborn proclivities. That's the power.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I might not even wait till tonight. I'm just do this right now. I feel like this is exactly what I need. Like I feel like I'm trying to figure out all this stuff with like my life with the kids and like it's summer. I'm like, I just need to get grounded. Not just like this.
The good thing about it is it's a method, right? It's like step by step. There's 13 steps that you walk through them, and at the end of it, you're going to have all the data you need. And it's, look, I'm psyched it exists. I wish it had existed for me, because I would have had many fewer boneheaded detours. But it exists now, so that's cool.
Yeah, it does exist now. And I want to just say thank you so much for the work that you do, that you continue to do. I think it really is life-changing and world-changing. And I hope that it does get into high schools. I hope you do travel the world. I'm not going to hope. Like, you're a go-getter. Like, you're going to do all this. So I guess I'll just be watching you do it.
All right. I'm motivated, I'll tell you that. All right, fantastic. It's great talking to you. I love talking to you. So
great talking to you too, Suzy.
Everything works out the way it's supposed to.